Okay, let's talk about the D climates, shown in lighter green here. And this is a map showing the distribution of D climates. One thing notable about D climates is that they're only in one hemisphere. We only have it in the northern hemisphere. By the way, we also have it at high elevation zones as well, such as in the Sierra Nevada of California. But that would be considered a highland or high elevation climate. But generally, this is the type of climate you find in northern Canada and northern Russia. So Canada and Russia are the two best examples of where we find a D climate. The difference between a D and a C is how cold the winters get. So C climates, if you look at the temperature variation, it's much less than this one, which is a D climate. So D climates are continental climates. They have less ocean influence and much more extremes, especially in the wintertime. So it gets really cold in D climates during the winter. Here's some images of in parts of Canada. These are usually dominated by these conifer trees. You can see the temperature pattern gets really low in the winter. However, they have fairly warm summers, so while the temperatures get quite cold in the winter, they're above 50 degrees in the summer. And that's important because that's why they have trees, because trees need a growing season, and because they get fairly warm in the summer, that gives a chance for trees to grow. But usually it's these hardy trees that can survive the very cold winters. What you typically find in these environments is what we call coniferous forests. Coniferous forests are with trees that are adapted to severe temperatures. So they're at high latitudes like Canada and Russia, but also present at high elevations like the Sierra Nevada. In Canada, it's called boreal forest, and in Russia, it's called the taiga. So this is where we find boreal forests in Canada and taiga in Russia, but you also find them in mountainous environments as well.